Hello, and thank you for joining Pituitary Network Association's webinar program, which is brought to you through the support of our sponsors and our expert contributors. The PNA is dedicated to educating people with pituitary disorders, their families, and their healthcare providers. The PNA is a nonprofit organization that relies on the support from our members and donors. During the webinar, please feel free to type in your questions at any time, but please note that all questions will be saved until the end of the webinar. We have allotted time to answer as many questions as possible. Any questions that are not answered will be reserved and answered by email. Today's webinar, How Does Real Change Take Place?, is being presented by Brian Theis. Brian is the founder and CEO of American Built Bodies, Theis Institute, and currently Theis Care, LLC, a multi-dimensional corporate executive health and wellness consulting business. He got his AA from Moorpark College and majored in biology and minored in chemistry, an educational background in sports medicine. He is certified through the International Sports Sciences Association. Bryant had served as the president of Starkey Foundation and has served thousands of patients worldwide. He has been awarded by St. John's Health Center and John Wayne Cancer Institute for the recognition of valuable contributions to the Brain Tumor Center. It was Bryant's contribution to his field and humanity through the development of revolutionary techniques and processes in health management. In 2004, at UCLA Pituitary Tumor Group, he was given an award for being a Valuable Contribution Appreciation Award. Brian was training and performed consultant for the Cincinnati Reds baseball team in 2001, as well as consultant and did the VO2 test program for the Los Angeles Kings in 2000 through 2005. He's a keynote speaker, publisher, and author for many years, and he's fitness editor for Backdraft, Ventura County Fire Department in 2000. In his 31 years in business, he worked with over 19,000 clients worldwide and has established himself as a pioneer in the field of executive health and wellness. Brian has worked with 975 physicians worldwide and currently an NBFE fellow since 2016. Also, he was awarded the #1 executive health and wellness consultant out of over 250,000 competing trainers. Brian, thank you so much for your involvement with PNA's webinar program. There'll be a brief delay as we change presenters.
Hi, everybody. I want to thank you for your patience today. This is the first time I've done such a thing. So it'll be a new learning experience for me to be speaking for here 30, 40 minutes without getting any feedback. But what I wanted to share with you guys, this is my experience over this last 31 years and what I really have found in the space of health and aging. Aging is very interesting because most people don't know much about it. And when the effects of aging start to happen to us, most people start to run from it because it's really a scary proposition. Again, if we look at this on a biological standpoint of aging, we have these things called macro and micro shifts. A lot of us can change the macro shifts, but we cannot change the micro shifts. So micro shifts are things that are biologically determined genetically. So how do we overcome that? Well, we can't change that, but what we can start to do is we can start to change a process called epigenetics. So based on our lifestyles and how we're regulating the system, we can have a profound effect on the message coming from this thing called the RNA in the cell. So we can actually start changing the protein structures within the cells to start producing a more favorable event. And the reason that is so important is because our health, the length of our health, and the quality of our lives are really determined on how we operate on a daily basis. If you look at it, again, biologically speaking, it takes us anywhere between 1,000 to 10,000 generations for us to make a micro shift in the cell. So if we look at today, we've made significant changes in our lifestyle in just 40 years. So we're not even significantly close. So the side effects of what we have from that is that we see it all around us is a process called dysfunction and disease. So dysfunction is basically that we're no longer operating within the normal structures of our bodies and what we were intended to be. So what happens in the process of body trying to figure this out, we run into difficulties. So what happens is instead of recovering properly and having our bodies move forward and our cells move forward, they start to break down faster than they can be repaired. In the earlier stages of our life, in the first 20 years, it's really not so difficult. We'll look at that a little bit later. It's not difficult. Where it becomes difficult is by time we're chronologically, those are calendar years, by time we're 15 years of age, if we have suffered from a genetic disposition, type 2 diabetes or obesity, then we run into premature biological aging. And that's when we have individuals that were genetically designed to live to be 80 to 90 years of age, and they're succumbing to disease and dysfunction and premature death in their 40s and their 50s. And we'll look at that as we start to go. So again, aging really comes down to how quick can we repair? Are we repairing quicker than we're breaking down? What's influencing that is our lifestyles, what we do with our bodies, what we put in our bodies, and how we regulate the system. And remember, it's our responsibility as human beings to re-regulate this or regulate our health on our own. This responsibility relies on nobody but yourself. And if you think about it, even as children, as we grow, you know, they're significant, but they're really byproducts of their environment. So if their environments aren't healthy and conducive to promoting health and longevity, they're going to start suffering the consequences. And we see that every single day here in the West of the United States. Actually, we see it globally, but more here because we're a nation of affluent. And of that influence, we're dying of premature death and illness quicker than any other recorded time, even though we have more available to us today than ever before. So the reason I'm telling you that is that we run into this problem that when we have others controlling our health, we're really putting our lives in their house. It's going to be based on what they think is healthy, what their experience of healthy has been, and where they're living today. One thing that's really difficult to do, it's really difficult to have empathy for other people, is when you cannot feel the chemical conditions. And what I mean by that is feel how they're living. And if you can't see the impact on an internal scale, it's very easy to send someone down the wrong road, not really intending to do that. So my whole message here is that you really need to be responsible for your health. That's no one's job but yourself. So keep that in mind. Another thing I want to start looking at is this thing called chronological and biological aging and knowing the difference. So our chronological years is nothing but calendar years. From the day we're born until the day we pass, every year we get 1 year older on the calendar. But biological aging is the biological chemistry within the body. So let's look at this. There's 3 different facets of it that are really important to know. Also, keep in mind that within the first 20 years of our life, we're going to generate all the energy that we're ever going to have. Now, we can remodel that and transform that as we go on, but that first 20 years is critical. So as you're listening to this today, if you have children, if you have nephews and cousins, and anyone under the age of 20 that's significant in your life, really consider what I'm telling you today to really help them. So in that first 20 years, we're stockpiling all the energy we're ever going to have in our bodies. So if we leave it up to nature, we're active and we're productive and we're always on the move. Unfortunately, we have more of a sedentary lifestyle today, and we fought hard for that. But the side effects of that aren't very positive. So within that first 20 years, as long as we're active and we're eating properly, and if you leave kids to their own device, they're relatively healthy and they're moving and they're just pushing out a lot of energy because they're building tons of this energy. So within that first 20 years, if we leave them alone to their own devices and to nature, they typically will do nothing but grow until they're around the age of 20. At 20, take a month or a week or a year in any direction, we get in the second facet of life. It's called biological aging. And this is when things become significant. So our biological age really determines the length and the quality of our life because they're based on what we put in our bodies, what we do with our bodies, and how we're regulating the body. So from time of birth to 20, we usually get this free ride, and that's when life is incredibly good. It's all about imaginations. Remember, living in everything possible and everything potential. You want to be a nurse, you want to be a doctor, you want to be a firefighter, you want to be a governor, you want to be a fashion model, you want to be all these things because you're living in this incredible place because you have all this energy moving us. Again, take a week or a month or a year in any direction around the age 20 chronologically, we shift in the second facet of life. So now what happens is, again, what we put into our bodies, what we do with our bodies, and how we regulate this is going to determine how we function. From 20 to 30, roughly, in science, it's called the Goldilocks period of time. So if we were relatively healthy in that first 20 years, that means from 20 to 30, that process is going to help us significantly. So when we look about diet and exercise, if you're relatively healthy, anything usually will work in that time. We get this big boost. So in science, it's called the Goldilocks period of time. The porridge is just right. And we do relatively well, and we don't think much about our health and our wellness and maintaining our lives in that state. So now we get to around 30 years of age. At 30, things start to make a significant change. So now what happens, we don't get a free ride anymore. So based on how we're going to live and the quality of life is really going to be determined on how we're living that life. Now keep in mind, the body is the best scorekeeper in the world. It will not let you get away with anything, even if you believe it to be different. It is tracking every single thing you're doing because it has to, because it's trying to figure this out based on your genetic potential of life and quality of life. So after the age of 30, we're left to our own devices. It becomes very significant. Now keep in mind, when we're born, I call it the message in our head. We're born with this little bitty message in our head, and for the first 20 years, it's pretty much just dormant if we're relatively healthy. When we switch over the second facet of life at 20, biological aging, that voice becomes activated. And this voice is very significant because it has a significant job. And its job is to make sure that it's aware and telling you exactly how you're fitting in this thing called the world. How healthy are you based on your lifestyle and what you're doing? What are the side effects and where are we really going with this? That first 20 years, if we're relatively healthy because of the first 20 years prior to that, that voice really doesn't say much. At 30, that voice becomes a little bit more active. By the time we run into our 40s, it's interesting, because that voice is really starting to talk to us. As we start to get into dysfunction because we're sedentary and we're giving our health over to other people and we're not doing our jobs relating to ourselves, this voice becomes louder and louder. By time 45, I've noticed in 31 years and over 19,000 successful documented cases doing this, I have found about 45 years of age is when people start making decisions about where they're going to go with their lives, what they're going to accept, and what are the things they're not going to accept about the age of 45, because by that time, they've acquired some very interesting things. They've acquired a thing called knowledge. Knowledge that they've created through their mind, and from that mind they've created these things called experiences. From those experiences and that knowledge, their lives have reinforced certain things. So they get to know themselves and they get to know what happens when they do this and when they do that. So they get a real good perspective of life at 45 years of age, also where they're standing in that. Another wonderful thing that they've had the opportunity to do around the age 45 chronologically, they've witnessed life around them. They've seen their parents and their grandparents and their relatives and their friends start to succumb to disease and dysfunction. So they see people unhealthy. They see the cost and the pain associated with that. And they also get to experience this process called death. So at that time, they start to look at, where am I at? What am I going to really do with this? Because deep down inside, they know that biologically, they know this because of the voice. They know if they don't start doing something significant to change what's happening, the outcome's not going to be very pleasant. It's going to be very expensive, and it's going to consume their lives. Keep in mind, and I'll tell you this for sure, your health is the center point of your life. Everything revolves around your health. If your health starts to decline, everything around it will start to decline. The more your health starts to decline, any of you who are suffering know that your every decision is going to be based on your dysfunction, your disease, no matter what that might be. And there's many forms of that. So that's what we're looking at here. Now, keep in mind, by the time we're 50 years of age, biology really doesn't have any use for us. So this is what this means. After 50 years of age, for every year, for every day that we do not exercise and take care of ourselves properly. Now notice I said properly. At 50, actually over 40, one size does not fit all. You know, there's this misconception that as long as you do a little bit of exercise and as long as you try to eat a little bit okay, that's enough. No, it's not. We can get away with that in our 20s. We can probably get away with it for most people up to about 35, but then after that, we can't get away with that. At 50, if we're not doing it properly for ourselves, and that's why I said no, the one size doesn't fit all, for every day we get it wrong, we will age biologically 3 days. That's why when we look at the science around 60 to 65s to try to put this together, it looks like chicken noodle soup. It goes everywhere because it's so diverse. And that's where we see the struggle. The struggle in our life really starts over the age of 45. So let me kind of regress a little bit here. So I was telling you there's 3 facets of life, from conception to 20, from 20 to 30, and 30 beyond. Now, the reason I want to go back those first 20 years, we as a species or an organisms or humans, however you want to look at us, we know this. We know by the time you're 15 chronologically on the calendar, if you have type 2 diabetes, a genetic disposition, or you're obese, those individuals will start to biologically age when they're 7 chronologically. That's a big one. So they've now taken this range and now they've compressed it down. And that's why we have more people dying of premature death and illness than any other recorded time, even though we have more available to us than ever before. So we have these individuals succumbing to a horrible life way before they should be doing that. So this has become significant. So let's look and see what our environment's doing concerning this big issue and problem. And it's interesting. If you look at my space of life, there's only two ways to look at it from my perspective. You look at it to make a decision to do what's right for people, or you look at it to make a decision to make as much money as you possibly can. What I've done for myself, my life has been committed to saving and changing lives because I suffered from an early stage of life and I continue to suffer today. You wouldn't notice it looking at me, or you wouldn't notice it from my behavior because I'm bigger than any conditions within my life. I can control them, and maybe I'll discuss a little bit about that today. So here we go. We look at this today. Now, this is quite alarming to me when I look at this again. We know that in the marketplace today, 95% of all advertising within the West in the United States concerning my space of health and wellness done the right way, we know that 95% of that's only geared between 20 to 30-year-olds. Think about that. It's in that Goldilocks period of time where about everything and anything will work if you're relatively young, relatively healthy that first 20 years. So 95% of all the marketing is geared for that because they know about anything will work. After 30, it drops off significantly because they know after 30, it becomes very complicated because one size does not fit all. It becomes not only very complicated, but you need specific venues to produce these end results on an individual basis. And it's a huge undertaking. There's a lot of signs there. There's a lot of different setup, and it's more expensive to do that. So a lot of them will not go in that direction, but what they're very good at, they're very good at playing with your emotions because they know up to about 45 or 50 is when at 45 to 50, we'll make these big significant changes like enough is enough here. I get it. There's enough writing on the walls here. But up into that place, they know you'll be undecisive. because that's how we become here in the West for a lot of people, because what we want and what we do are two different things, and they know that quite well. Listen, none of us want to be unhealthy. I get that, and I believe that. But very few people will put in the time to really do it right and to become healthy. And if you ask, well, how can you say such a thing? Because it's all supported by the science. We see it every single day. 65% of the people in the United States, if it's even done properly, are obese and out of shape and dysfunction. 65%. These are the individuals that they're actually tracking, and they're coming up with a number. I believe it's a much higher. And this is my own personal expression of this, is because I've lived in the space for 31 years. I work in the trenches every day. I see what's happening out there. So I think it's a lot bigger than that. And if we think about it, 150,000 people die a day in the United States. And 100,000 of them die from premature death and illness and disease from lifestyles. It's absolutely alarming that the deaths that we have today based on this. So again, if you look at the science, it really starts to support this. So how do we start putting this all together? We start putting this together by understanding the science here. Remember, we're nothing but energy and transfer of energy within the system. That's all we are. That's all we are. So what we do is this. Again, that first 20 years is the best time of life. It's called the miracle time of life, because what we're doing is we're taking these things called electrons. I won't get much into quantum physics, but it gets into these electrons that produce matter, that produce organs and tissues into us. All we're doing is transforming that energy within the collective body to produce a physical end result. A lot of that starts with our consciousness. And what we have today, most people are very unconscious of their unconscious processing. So they have to rely on that voice. Unfortunately, the voice I discussed typically doesn't start to scream at us until we get between 45 to 50 years of age. So how do we be aware of this? It's very simple. Take the time to listen and have some self-talk. Ask yourself some simple questions. How am I living today? Am I in good health? Is my weight in the place it needs to be? Now, when you ask yourself these questions, you have to be completely honest to yourself. You can lie to the world all you want, but you can't lie to you. And if you think you can, you're going to be in for a big surprise. So ask yourself, how am I living today? Am I breathing right? Can I walk up 3 flights of stairs? Am I having difficulty getting out of my seat? Am I taking more than 3 or 4 medications? Look at that. And my clothes that I'm wearing in my 20s, are they the same clothes I'm wearing today if I was healthy in my 20s? Because you shouldn't be too far removed from that. No matter if you have children, you have other things going on in your life. You still stay within that range, because 20 to 25 is a very good place for us to always look at. Most people are at their ultimate health between 20 to 25. So that's how their body should be genetically all the time, with some very small dispositions or very small changes. Now, that's in our appearance. Biologically, we should have some aging issues. Again, there's no reason why you should be in your 50s and 60s and not be biologically in your early 20s, because it's possible. I see it every single day. In fact, I have a gentleman that comes in from New York City a couple times through the year, maybe 50 times a year to see me. He's 72 years of age. He's just absolutely incredible. So not only does he look amazing, but he's so physically fit biologically, because believe me, he gets tested on everything. He's a very interesting gentleman. So again, be honest with yourself. How am I feeling? How am I breathing? What are the foods that am I consuming? Are they processed? Are they fast foods? Are they organic? Am I eating 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 calories a day? Am I getting at least 90 or 70% vegetable-based plants in my body on a daily basis? Am I eating candies? What am I doing? Am I eating at 11 or 12 o'clock at night? Am I sleeping 6 hours a day or 10 hours a day or 3 hours a day? Because all of you that are watching me and listening to me, you're all responsible for this, which is a wonderful thing. Be your own scientist. You really have to look at it that way, because what's more important than your life and your health? Especially if your lives are bigger than yourselves. And what I mean by that is, if your life is supporting others around you, then you should look at not only doing it for yourself, but you should look at the possibilities and the prospects of doing it for them. So what happens to you if your life goes down because it's compromised of your health? How's it going to impact those people that you care about and you love the most? So again, be honest with yourself on these questions. So let's say that you find yourself in a situation that you really don't want to be in. So how do you go by doing that? I'm going to tell you. So if we look at the body as a whole, we know that our number one foundation of health, it's called our fountain of youth, is an oxidative process. Our body's ability to process oxygen on a significant level. So if we look at all forms of disease and dysfunction in life, it comes from a little organelle called the mitochondria. It's the powerhouse of the cell, and the powerhouse of the cell utilizes a lot of oxygen. So if we're not getting the oxygen that we are required to have for a healthy life, those mitochondria will start to go dormant. As those mitochondria become dormant, we stop losing the ability to process and utilize oxygen within all the cells. When we start to lose that ability, we start to get in this process called dysfunction. If we stay in dysfunction for too long, we get into disease. It's just that simple. So you want to start getting in a program or looking at a program for yourself, and you can do this all in your own home. You don't have to buy anything. You can do it all in your own home by a gift called the human body that you all have, right? So you take your body and you start getting into exercise that is going to start moving your whole system and breathing, and start out easy. 15, 20 minutes a day. Start using squats, chair squats, arm curls, arm punches, sit-ups. There's a great combinations of things you can start doing for yourself. But what you want to start doing is getting your respiratory rate up. So you want to make sure that 63,000 miles of arteries and capillaries and veins all put together, that you're processing a significant amount of oxygen through there. But as we're doing this, you always want to make sure it's a very active process that you're doing, not a passive process. So what that means is you want those muscles to be firing enough to pull in the oxygen into the cells. So keep that in mind. As you're doing that, you also want to start eating better. Now keep in mind, a lot of people see it this way, which is true. Our calories coming in, it's energy and it's fuel. It's energy, right? It's fuel for our systems. What most people don't realize, it's also information to the cells. And believe me, your body is very specific on how it works and what it needs to get in. So you need to look at that. A very good thing to look at is going plant-based. I personally, 70% of my meals on a daily basis are plant-based. That shift really started taking place for me in my earlier 40s. And the reason for that is because my life was starting to change. Today I'm 52 years of age. I do really well for myself on this health standpoint. But again, 70% of my meals are all plant-based. Very rarely will I consume any type of starchy vegetables. They're very hard on the pancreas and they're full of sugar. So keep that in mind. So start filling this out. Get on the internet. You can look up vegetables that are non-starchy. There's a whole list of them. You can also start looking up good quality meats, very lean in nature. So about 70% of that's going to be vegetable based. And the other part of that, put your lean meats in there. Another thing that you want to do is you want to keep this thought in place. You don't ever want to eat till you're full. Just eat until you're satisfied, because this is what happens with us. These are the decisions that your body is making every single day you get up. What's my energy level today? based on my lifestyle and based on what I've done my whole entire life, where am I heading today? What is the energy requirement I'm going to need today? So your body is going to force you to do two things. It's either going to force you to feed yourself by going to itself, or it's going to force you to go outside of it to get the energy to pull it back in. That's when we run into problems. So if you're not at the right weight or the healthy weight, and there's no such thing as the best weight that you can put in a statistic, it's what's good for you. I'll give you an idea. I'm 52 years of age. I'm only 5'8", so for my age and my height, I should weigh 165 at the most. I'm relatively lean, but I weigh 225 pounds. So on every single scale out there, I'm considered chronically or morbidly obese. But if you're to see me, I'm not even close to that. So that's what I wanted to tell you. It's what is the right weight for you. If you're functioning and all your medical scores are coming out fantastic, you know you're within that right weight. And again, this goes back to honesty. If you are honest with yourself, you'll know. So be honest with yourself and start consuming foods. Consume those foods just till you feel satisfied. Because if you can do this and you're combining it properly, your body will go back to the fats for the additional fuel. If we do that, we get in a process called lipolysis. So that's when our body will start to utilize the oxygen to produce the fat breakdown so we can become significant, because we're regulating this thing called the Krebs cycle. And that's why they tell us to have energy, we have to physically be active to make energy. It doesn't work any other way. If our lifestyles are sedentary, we're going to take our energy yields and we're going to suppress them. If we're going to suppress them and we need additional fuel, we're going to get it from the outside. And if that Krebs cycle is not moving and we're not using those calories, they're going to be converted to fat every single time without question. And then we're going to have an issue with that, because not only is it going to turn into adipose tissue, but it's going to turn into other fats in our system that we really don't want to deal with. So information from the foods you're taking in. Get in your foods, have it more plant-based, and just feel satisfied. But now we're going to run into an issue when we do this. Your body doesn't want to do that very easily here, because it's been conditioned and it's been chemically ordered to do just the opposite. So whatever your Achilles heels are, and you know what they are, whatever the Achilles heel is that gets you out of an active, healthy lifestyle, be prepared for those to be amplified. Because what your body's going to do here, it says, look, I have 100 trillion cells. Each cell goes through 100,000 chemical reactions. I do not want to change the order. It's a big undertaking. It doesn't want to change the chemical order. So it's going to do all its personal research, and it's going to say, well, how did I keep Brian out of doing that before? Well, these are the things that I did to keep Brian out of it before. So we're going to just amp that up. We're going to make him super sensitive to these things that we know that are going to take him out of this great health. But believe me, be persistent, move beyond that. Because over time, what's going to take place, your body's going to realize that your mind is now in charge again. Once our minds become in charge again, now we have real change, because our minds and our bodies are going to start working in harmony. If they don't work in harmony, believe me, change will never happen permanently, because chemically it's impossible for it to do it. So when you look at your health, not only do you have to look at how you're moving and how your chemistry is and what your weight is, you got to start thinking, what is the chemical order? So this is how it works. And this is why children are so powerful and wonderful. They're always creative. They're always living in the future. I want to do this. I want to do this. It's all about possibilities and potential. So their brains are the masters, right? And their body's the servant. Their body's doing every single thing their brain's telling them to do. That's how it should be our whole entire lives. But when we get to a place, when we start to age quicker biologically than we are chronologically, the master becomes the body. So the brain now becomes the servant. So if we start regulating this body to go down the road we really don't want it to go down, it's going to lock you in. And believe me, 95% that's programmed in your unconscious body in every single one of those cells. Your 5% that's conscious is never going to beat it. It will never get close. Now, you can convince yourself that it will do that. It just won't do it. It can't beat 95% of the programmed body within your cell. So when you look at your lifestyle and your exercise to your life, you need to start looking at it from these perspectives. Am I changing the chemical orders within my body? So over time, my body will start to do this for itself. And I'm telling you, that's a great place to be, because the body knows no difference. So let me tell you this first. We're all chemically addicted to something. There's a chemical order for everything. So when you want to pick a chemical addiction or order that's going to prolong the length and quality of your life, you all have the ability to do that, or at least most of you have the ability to do that. So what I'm saying there is you can get your body 95% driving forward, and the bad 5% of messages that are coming through don't have a chance. That's when it becomes a permanent change, and that's when it becomes a life change for you. So again, all this is available for you. The life you're living today, or collections of decisions you've made in the past, how you're reinforcing those decisions, or are you changing those decisions? If the chemical order in your body has been for disease and dysfunction, you're never going to get out of that until you rechange that whole process. So this is where being aware of your unconscious thoughts and programs is critical. Look at your life, be honest. Do I have the health, the blood chemistry, the functions that I need to have? Well, maybe I don't. So what do I need to overcome that? A very good rule of thumb, get a complete physical. Make sure you're in good working order. If your physicians that you're seeing want any other changes for you, follow their guidelines and instructions. But let's assume that there isn't any here. You're never going to go wrong having a higher plant-based meal. With your plant-based meals, you want to consume very, very lean proteins. And in that plant-based meal, try to stay away, and this is my personal opinion, from the starchy vegetables. And if you have to have them, just have them like a piece of cake. And that's kind of how I see them. They're a dessert to me. Now, I have these little veggie drinks. They're 90% vegetable, 10% fruit. I love them. They're candy to me. They're absolutely amazing. And every time I take a drink, I feel it. I feel the energy in it. I mean, I can feel it breaking down in my system and running through me. So these are the things you need to get in contact with, and you have to know these feelings within your body. So 70% vegetable, the other one's lean protein. Do not overeat. Just get satisfied. If you can start doing that and doing some activity in your home, you don't need to go anywhere else, that's circulating the whole body, getting all those major muscles to work. Wow, watch what happens in a very short period of time. Listen, we're all, including every one of you there, is built for greatness. We all have this ability to do this. So I encourage you all to get in there and start doing this for yourself. It's a wonderful process. You got everything to gain and absolutely nothing to lose. So I know that I'm up to 40 minutes here. So I believe I'm going to be having some questions. Is that true, Tammy?
Yes, I do have a couple of questions, not too many. So if you have questions, now's the time to type them in. The question I have, how does any of this apply to handling pituitary disease? I have surgery and radiation have been pan-hypopituitary since I was 38. How can I go beyond the obvious of exercising and eating right to extend my life?
Well, that's a really good question, and let me answer it that way. You're bigger than any conditions in your life. There's a lot more going on in your body than the issues that you're dealing with. And that's what you have to keep in mind. You know, I mean, I do the same thing. We get into dysfunction and disease. Like I told you, I come from a very big past of overcoming a lot of things physically and chemically in my life because I was born into premature death and illness. That's how I was born. So keep in mind, there's all other things taking place in your life that need to be taken care of biologically. So really start focusing on those. You will never go wrong, ever go wrong by doing what's right for your body, even if you're having an issue that you're discussing today. Does that make sense?
Yes. I don't see any more questions. I think, can you maybe elaborate a little bit more on that? How can somebody go about with limitations and things from and hormonal issues? Are there any recommendations that you have to, some people have joint problems related to pituitary disease. What is safe exercising and ways that people can help to reverse the aging or make themselves healthier?
Again, that's a good question. I think the best place to start is with your healthcare provider, because they're going to know your history more. Once they know your history and the particulars of you, they should be able to start directing you on how to start doing all of this that I discussed. Again, it's a fair question. It's a great question, but it's actually a difficult question to answer. And the reason I say that, I wouldn't want to put anything out there for you great folks out there that would set you in the wrong direction. So you might have joint issues, some other people might not have. So that's why your healthcare provider is going to be the best source for you to go to. And then once you get that, if they can only get you started, then you move on from there. So what I would recommend that you do is you go and you find somebody in that space, in that field of real health, go out to them and ask them where this is. Hire them, utilize their knowledge and their experience. Maybe you can get it in a rehab program. I'm not sure what the hospitals have today, but it's up to you to go out there and find the best source for you possible. But you're never going to go wrong with the vegetable meal plan. That's a very, very good way to go. And another thing, only feel satisfied. Don't push that threshold. Just feel satisfied and move. Just move. But remember, linear walking is very successful, but only in a short period of time, because it's not able to change the chemical order significantly. That's why doing arm punches and squats and sit-ups and running in place and all these different things that are activating your whole body, you can do that with arthritis. You just regulate the range. So there's a whole lot that you can do right there alone.
Excellent, thank you. Another question, I'm in my early 70s and would love to hear your particular recommendations and challenges for those in my stage of life.
In her 70s or in their 70s, it's the same thing. The nice thing about this, even if you're in 70s, you can start reversing the biological aging process, and the same thing applies. Where are you at? Where is your health? What can you do? Really focus on what you